Welcome to Threads of Sustainability, where you get to hear the passionate, informative, and engaging conversations of creatives, makers, manufacturers, and producers from all over the globe. We explore what sustainability can look like in the quilting, fiber, and textile world, and I'm your host, Bridget O'Flaherty, also known as the Sustainable Quilter. So today's episode is a little bit different. I've got a guest with me today who has her own podcast. She's a writer, blogger, dressmaking teacher, and general sewing and sustainability obsessive. She works mostly in the garment sphere, and she has a podcast called Check Your Thread. So we have a lot in common, and we've been following each other for a while. And we just decided we'd have a conversation because we probably have a lot of crossover people who listen to us and a lot of the same kind of themes in mind. And it was a really interesting conversation. So yeah, Zoe Edwards, she started a blog about 13 years ago called Zoe, What Do You Know? And then she also started a wardrobe challenge called Me Made May, where she asks the participants to pledge to wear their clothing that they've made over the month in new ways and to help kind of maybe improve their relationship with their handmade wardrobes, which is a super cool idea. It's a lot like quilt-alongs, really, getting people to kind of think about what they're doing. Anyway, she's a really creative force who inspires others to pursue their passions with sustainability in mind. We had a really interesting conversation. We jumped into all kinds of different things, and I hope you like the episode. Welcome to Threads of Sustainability. I have with me today Zoe Edwards from the UK, and she is another podcaster who is focused on sustainability. And I thought it'd be so cool to have you on the podcast and just be able to have a conversation about some of the things that we have in common, and also maybe help out the listeners on my podcast to understand, because oftentimes people who are quilters, they also make clothes. So having some of those ideas around options for sustainable options on the clothing side of things, on the sewing side of things might be really cool. But we just have a lot in common. So I thought it'd just be cool to talk. So welcome, Zoe.
Thank you so much. This is so fun. I'm a fan of your podcast. I've been really enjoying hoovering up your episodes. So I'm very, very happy to be on your feed. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. Well, it's so good to have you. You were one of my first people, like when I started the podcast, of course, I did my research and I wanted to see who was out there doing sustainable things around textiles. And yours was one of the first podcasts that came up. So I've listened to a whole bunch of your episodes as well, and trying to, soak up all of your guests and the different things you got going on in your podcast as well. So
awesome. Well, I first discovered your podcast by finding you on Instagram via Eliu, because Eliu Hernandez was a guest on both of our podcasts. Yeah. And then I saw this Threads of Sustainability. That sounds very relevant. I was like, check this out. This is amazing. Yeah. Awesome. So good to see that. We have got so many parallels.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's so important to have all these different voices around sustainability. I don't think there's any one way to approach sustainability. So we need to talk to people all over the place. So I think it's really good to have different ways that people can access the information.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about you and your background. Tell me a little bit about your world of textiles, what it is for you, and tell me about also where you live and all of that stuff.
Sure. So my name's Zoe. I currently live in the UK on the south coast. I have got a background. I studied fashion design at university many years ago. And I was actually working in clothing production for a few years based in London. Got really disillusioned with it because I was working in the production side of things. The clothes were actually being produced in factories in Romania and Turkey, places like that. So I wasn't actually dealing directly I wasn't on the shop floor as such in the factories, but my job was to make sure that the factories had everything they needed to complete those garment orders. So to make sure that they had enough zips, enough buttons, dyed the right colours, enough hangers, overbags, labels, care tags, swing tags, all the things apart from fabric that go into making a garment. And I had to always make sure that I was ordering more than would be needed to complete that order, just in case extra fabric was received from China so that they could create more garments and then we could sell some more garments. So I knew that there was more and more and more waste being built up in those factories, and I had no way of making sure that it would get used for future orders. I tried to work with the factories, but they were so busy and they're working with other suppliers and stuff as well, so it was kind of impossible, and that made me feel increasingly uncomfortable. And that was a kind of at the same time that I was discovering, so this would have been about 2007, 2006, around that time. So that was kind of the burgeoning of the online sewing community. And I was really
Okay.
getting into making my own clothes at the time, thinking about how I could be a little bit more sustainable, how I myself could extract myself from fast fashion. Not that we were using that term at the time, but
No.
kind of mass produced clothing, thinking about how my relationship with my clothing was changing and how it could be better. So it was kind of what I was doing in my own life was kind of at odds with what I was doing with my professional life. So
Right.
I increasingly found that that wasn't something that I could really deal with. So I left clothing, and then I moved to Spain for a couple of years, and then really got into making my own clothing whilst I was there because I had a bit more time on my hands because I was doing childcare. So I had the day free until I had to go and collect kids from school. So I was really getting really into trying to make different garments. So I started making my own undies. I started making my own coats. So I started getting used to using jersey fabric, really kind of just lit a fire under
Wow.
my making. Yeah, it was a
I'm
really
scared
creative
of jersey
time.
fabric.
We can talk about that if you would like. And then I was blogging myself. I'd started my own blog, which is So What Do You Know, which has been going for nearly 15 years now, which is pretty
Wow.
wild. Yeah. So I was getting really into that. And at one point I thought, let's put all the things that I've made on a rail, see what that looks like. So I did so. And I was thinking, that looks like a wardrobe. I wonder how I could move more towards that. And I still had some sort of weird disconnect with the way that I was feeling about the garments that I make myself. Somehow I wasn't trusting them as much as I would do a
Sure.
ready to
Oh,
wear item.
interesting.
Yeah, it made no sense to me. But sorry, there was a big slam then, and my husband just came in.
That's okay.
um, so I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to challenge myself, because I like doing silly challenges sometimes, to see if I could wear just things that I made myself for a month. So I gave myself the caveat of I was allowed to wear, I think, what did I not make? I didn't make bras. I didn't make socks and tights, and I didn't make shoes. But everything else that I was putting on my body had to be something that I made myself. So I did that for a month. That was back in, oh my
That's
goodness, that would
amazing.
have been 2010 in the March, and that was me made March. And
Okay.
I did it. I did my challenge. It was a freezing cold month because even though I was living in Spain, it does still get really cold in the
Right.
winter. And I basically had two warmish tops, and I would just rotate them one day one top, one day another top. And I learned a lot, and I really did start to kind of accept these garments as clothes. But I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do this again in a slightly warmer month when I could access more of the things that I'd been making and really put more of those things to the test? So because I had my blog and people had been following along, I kind of put a shout out saying, would anyone like to join me? So I thought maybe there'd be a
Nice.
few I thought maybe there'd be a handful of people that might want to kind of take on some sort of similar challenge. They
Yeah.
didn't have to necessarily do everything, but maybe they would wear one thing that they've made each day or something like that. And I put it out there. Does anyone want to join me? And I had I think it was about 70 people signed
Amazing.
up to take part. And that was called Me Made May. That might sound familiar. And so that was how that challenge began. And then year upon year upon year, more and more and more people have joined and signed up to participate every May, and there's now tens of thousands of people that take part every May,
That's
challenging themselves
awesome.
in some
So
way.
So how do they participate? What do you have them do through that march? What do they do? Or through the May, I guess.
So the way it's, I think one of the is, I kind of see it's a kind of almost a double-edged sword. The thing about Me Made May is that you can make it what you want it to be because you set the specifics of your own pledge. So that was always baked in from the beginning. Like for example, I was challenging myself to wear only things that I made myself, whereas some people were maybe wearing one thing that they made each day. So it's I wanted it to be as inclusive as possible. Like for what as you were saying, or as we were saying previously that we have not said yet in this conversation, everyone's coming at it from different points in their life. Maybe not everyone's got the goal of wearing head to toe
Yeah.
self-made things. Maybe people just want to start embracing what they make a bit more. But so you can set the pledge however you like, depending on what your own goals are. So I always say to make it challenging but doable. So if you already wear one self-made item every day, challenge yourself to maybe wear twice a week, make it head to toe. Or maybe you could say, I will not wear the same combination of items throughout the month, or something like that, something that you can learn from, something that's going to have a benefit to you.
Yeah.
So that these days, my own personal challenge, because I kind of only wear things that I made myself, so that's not really a challenge, but I tend to challenge myself to wear a different combination of items each day because, like many people, I tend to, in my normal life, just wear the same combination of items again and again and again, which is completely fine. Like I'm all for outfit repeating, but I do find it doesn't really feel so exciting and I don't
Yeah.
have as much fun as I possibly could. So by kind of forcing myself, quote unquote, to wear a different combination each day, I come up with some combinations that I then decide that I really love. And then that's something that then can inform my dressing throughout the rest of the year. So
Yeah.
that's something that I really love about it. So
And
yeah, so
so where do these folks do this? Like they sign up. How do they what are the logistics of it?
Sure. Well, this has changed with the kind of the evolution of the online sewing community.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, back in 2008, when I started my blog, I think um, it was blogs. That's where generally people would kind of gather. There was a couple of community sites or a couple of community blogs, but generally people were communicating via checking each other's blogs out, leaving comments, looking at each other's blog roll to see what other blogs they follow and going checking out those. And that's generally how the online sewing community kind of manifested. And then as things, as kind of technology progressed, we then had a kind of a hub, or first of all, I should say it's a personal challenge. You do it yourself.
Okay. So Me Made May is something that you've got going on in your community and you invite people to come along with you. I love the idea of that. It's a lot like we have quilt block of the month or quilt alongs in the quilt world.
Right.
And people will put out patterns and you can do these quilts every month or patterns and show your quilts off and do these quilt alongs. So it's kind of a similar
Lovely.
thing of bringing community
Yeah,
together around a theme.
absolutely. And I really try and emphasize with Me Made May, it's about kind of getting more from the things that already exist. It's not about a mad rush to make more things in advance of May. So you've got more things to show off.
Right.
It's about setting a pledge that allows you to kind of wear what you've already made more or in different ways to learn about them and learn about yourself. So it's a great opportunity to really analyze like what's working for you, what makes you feel good, what you drawn to wearing again and again. And then you can learn lessons from that. You can say like, oh, I make dresses all the time, but I never wear them. Like, stop making
Right.
dresses, or
Right.
or what did you miss? Like, what if you decided to, for example, you decided to cut out ready to wear all the time? What ready to wear items did you miss during that month? Maybe
Right.
that's telling you about where you should be putting your energy and resources in for your future making. Like, oh,
Oh
I really
yeah.
missed those jeans. Well, maybe there's a project you could factor in the future. Stop making the things you don't wear very much. Stop making colors that you don't think you look nice in. Whatever it is, what makes you physically feel comfortable, what
Yeah.
by the end of the day could you not wait to take off, or what did you like come home and I didn't even want to take that off. There's
Yeah.
so much you can learn, and by setting the pledge I mean, you can really think about it very deeply and really kind of craft a pledge that
Mhm.
you want to get a specific goal from. Or you could take it more generally and just literally wear your things a little bit more than you normally do, or in a different way, and just be open to the lessons that you can
Yeah,
learn from that, you know?
I like that. I like that a lot. And I think that's fantastic. So if people want to sign up for that, do you have a sign up for it, or is it just
Well,
in May
if
you
you
use the hashtags?
Well, I do. If people want to be part of I mean, this is the thing. Like, I don't really have signups on my blog anymore because the sewing community has kind of evolved, and that's not really. In fact, I don't have comments on my blog anymore because of that spam I was getting.
Right.
So it's kind of, you can sign up and you can take part for yourself on your own, or if you want a community aspect, yeah. If you're on Instagram, um, why don't you pop up a little thing on your grid, saying, I'm participating in Me Made May. This is my pledge. If you want to know more, you could send them to my podcast. Check your
Yeah,
thread, because
absolutely.
I'm going to have and I did this last year and I'm going to do it again. I'm actually going to rerun an episode, which is a basic, like, what is Me Made May? Because it is a bit difficult and as I was saying, like, Me Made May, what I think about it is it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like, I think of it's very open, which I think is its real strength, but then its negative side is it's quite difficult to explain. It's not like, oh, you do this every day for this. It's like, no, you set that yourself. So it can be
Yeah,
a bit difficult to explain to other people. So send them to the Check Your Thread podcast. There'll
I
be
will.
an episode at the beginning of April called What is Me Made May? And that's a real good kind of
Okay.
explanation
Awesome.
of how to participate and
Yeah,
what they can get from it and why they should.
definitely we'll put that into the show notes. Um, okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit more about your podcast and some of the guests that you have on there, and some of the goals you have for your podcast. Tell
Sure.
me about that.
So I've been making Check Your Thread for about 18 months now. It's a weekly podcast. So I've just published my 80th episode today.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Um, it's similar to yourself and the goals that you have with Threads and sustainability. My goal is to explore, like, I'm a passionate sewer, I'm a passionate garment sewer, but I am learning as I go along. I want to explore different aspects of how to be more sustainable in what I make. And I'm kind of going along this journey and kind of, bringing the podcast listeners along with me, finding interesting people that I've been bookmarking for yonks and
Yeah.
actually saying, like, now I've got a podcast, would you like to talk to me about that? And
Yeah.
rather than just some random person popping up in their DMs, it's like, let's have this conversation, let's inspire people, let's learn, let's dig deeper into what you're doing, why, how. So I have a lot of guests on my podcast, plus also I do some solo episodes which are more kind of like deep dives into a specific thing. So I might I did a little mini series on the Make Do and Mend movement during the campaign during the Second World War, for example, or I did an episode about thread. Like, I've looked into all different kind of more sustainable aspects of the thread that we can use. I looked into what are zero waste sewing patterns, and then that was a great foundation for me then to go and talk to a number of zero waste sewing pattern designers. So
So tell
yeah.
me a little bit about that. Tell me what are zero waste patterns, because we have zero waste quilt patterns, but I want to know what.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
in terms of garment making, so zero waste sewing patterns are so traditional sewing patterns are shapes that you cut out of paper, you place on your fabric, you cut around them, and very often you get quite a lot of wasted fabric. Then the shapes don't tessellate. There's quite a lot of funny shaped fabric you may or may not be able to use in future projects. Whereas zero waste sewing patterns or minimal waste sewing patterns, they have all the pieces very cleverly designed so that they tessellate completely. So there's either no waste at all. So literally you're buying, like, the width of the fabric by the length, and there's nothing but maybe just the selve edge possibly. Or a minimal waste sewing pattern might mean that you end up with like a strip, like a rectangular strip at the side. But because it's kind of like a rectangle, it's much easier to then use in a future project
Sure.
than some weird, funny, quirky shapes. So zero waste sewing patterns often use less fabric than the equivalent style would be of a regular sewing pattern. So, for example, there's one of my very favorite zero waist sewing patterns is called the Zero Waist Cropped Shirt by a designer called Birgitta Helmerson, who I spoke to on my podcast. It's a really simple kind of button up cute top that you can customize really easily, but the smallest, it comes in 2 size ranges. The smallest size with the short sleeve only takes 90 centimeters of fabric, whereas the equivalent of a kind of boxy crop top would take at least 1.5 meters usually. So, because I think that's something that's often kind of people don't understand about zero waist sewing patterns. They kind of think, well, why do I just want to take that excess around with me? You know, why, what is the benefit of that? And I have found that through all the patterns that I've looked at, it does require less fabric in total than you would do for the equivalent of something similar.
Oh, interesting.
And it's just a really interesting, creative, dynamic sphere of the sewing world. And I think that what is happening right now is the level that zero waist sewing patterns are at right now really reminds me of how the indie sewing pattern scene was about 10 years ago. Like there's not thousands and thousands of designers working zero waist. There's only maybe about, well, that I can think of about 8. There's probably more that I haven't heard of, but it's very navigatable and it's really interesting. You can see and it's very dynamic. It's very creative. And I think it's just a really fascinating way of working, like the way that the designers that I've spoken to, the way that they approach pattern making is very different. So, for example, with a traditional sewing pattern, you might draft, say, a size 12, for example, and then you grade it up and you grade it down to get your different sizes. Whereas when I was talking to Liz Hayward, who's another amazing zero waist sewing pattern designer, she was explaining to me that when she's designing her zero waist sewing pattern, not only is she thinking about how those shapes are going to tessellate, she's also in her mind at the same time thinking how she can then include grading into that. So it's super clever. It's really fascinating. It's not something that I would be able to do, but I love it. And that's something that I like to explore in my podcast as well.
I haven't done a lot of garment sewing through my life, but I actually, like yesterday, I bought a pattern online on Etsy for a pair of pants that I want to make because I found this amazing linen. It's a yellow checkered linen tablecloth. And I want to make a pair of pants out of it.
Fantastic.
But I've always kind of struggled with the amount of waste that comes out of sewing garments. And then what do I do with that? I mean, I'm a quilter, so I got the ability to use those little pieces, but they are weird shapes and stuff. So I love the idea that there's people really having that kind of mindset, creativity to create patterns. And the idea that it will become normal. That to me is what's exciting, is that someday
absolutely
that's just going to be the normal way we do things. Instead of
it was historically the way it was historically the way that garments were created, like right up until like kind of industrialized fabric production. Fabric was so expensive, it was so difficult to produce. You used every tiny centimeter of that. You used the entire width and you used the entire length, and that was how garments were created right up until, I guess, during like the 18th century, possibly.
Industrial Revolution.
Exactly. And when then fabric became cheaper to produce, we could afford to waste some. And also the looms changed, so the widths were different and stuff like that as well. But so it's interesting. There's a very popular book called Zero Waste Fashion Design, which I'm looking at on my shelf now. And that looks into some of the historic ways and in the way that those could potentially inform designs going forward. It's a really interesting creative sphere. But I also look into other things, like things that you're interested in as well. Like during the podcast, I look into natural dyeing, for example. That's something that I just, in fact, at the weekend recorded another conversation about that, because I think that's something that's very, very interesting and something that is being embraced more in the garment sewing community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take a minute here to thank you for listening to the Threads of Sustainability podcast. I've really loved all of the interviews that I've done already and looking forward to doing so much more. If you're enjoying what you're hearing and you want to support the podcast, you can do that on my website at bridgetoflaherty.com, and you can buy me a cup of tea. I don't drink coffee, so I'd love a cuppa, and you can pay what you want. You can also follow, like, share the podcast episodes with a friend. I love getting your support and I love getting your feedback. Don't forget to send me an email and tell me what you think. So I want to talk to you. I want to ask you a little bit because most of the people on my podcast are quilters. They don't understand or know really the term fast fashion. They don't know what that
Right.
means. They don't know. And I found that when I've done my own talks about the quilting industry and the textile industry in
Mm-hmm.
general, that industrial revolution shift that happened that kind of just exploded the textile industry, and fast fashion grew out of that. Can you talk a little bit about that, and about, like, have you had guests on your podcast that have knowledge around that? So
It's
yeah,
so
talk to me a bit
interesting
about
that
that.
so many people, myself included, who are now interested in garment sewing and doing things more sustainably. So many of us have had experience within the garment industry. I was certainly, the companies that I was working for would definitely be how you would describe what you would now describe as fast fashion, although that wasn't really a term that was being used. So fast fashion is ready to wear clothes that are made, mass production. However, it's really something that kind of started to come to the fore more in the late 90s and into the 2000s. Fast fashion specifically is when the manufacture has been um, relocated to places in the world that have often been, um how do you say it,
Like,
often,
they're without regulation, right?
yeah, they are often places that have been colonized in the past and exploited, and the repercussions of that is that there are fewer regulations. There are, for example, there is fewer regulations in terms of pay and working conditions, and they can get away with treating workers really badly and paying them very little,
Not
and
to
that
mention
has
the
brought.
environmental. There's no checks and balances around the effluent that's coming out of the factories, and
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then that means that they can slash the price of manufacture compared to, for example, if they were made in the quote unquote West. So that means that the shops can then sell those garments much more cheaply. And we are encouraged to buy many, many more garments than, let's be honest, than we need, at a much faster pace. And the kind of perpetuation of that is kind of fueled by trends. So fast fashion tends to be very kind of trendy items that you are encouraged to kind of dispose of and
and
replace
replace. Yeah.
at a really rapid, at a rapid speed. So hence the idea of
Well,
fast, and
and
often
we
those fabrics that, sorry.
sorry, and I was just going to say, and we don't mind doing that because it's not very expensive for us. It's cheap, and it's easy to replace those clothing pieces, and they're kind of cheaply made as well, so they don't not as durable, so they will
Mm,
rip or wear in a way very quickly. And
yeah,
so, but we only consider the cost financially. We're not
yeah,
considering the other costs that it has in terms of
absolutely.
how it was made, right?
Absolutely. And often the fabrics are really of really poor quality. Like when I was working in the last clothing company job that I had. So when an order for a whole load of garments went through, the fabric would need to be tested and need to be independently tested. So I would receive the test reports, see how it washed, how much pilling was happening, and things like that. So then I could create decide what text and what logos should go on the garment care label. So I would see how these fabrics performed, and they were performed really badly. Like I knew that they weren't going to last very long,
Right.
and that isn't top of mind for when you're buying kind of trendy items. And I think also our expectation generally in the West of the quality of garments has really come down, because we do not expect to have them for so much longer. They're not so much of an investment because they are cheaper, and the
Yeah.
whole thing is devalued. The labor is devalued, the fabric is devalued, our expectations are devalued, everything is kind of brought down. And a lot of people get into either sewing garments or kind of designing patterns and what have you, because they are trying to extract themselves from that fast fashion kind of
Right.
process,
Yeah.
myself included. However, and this is something that, I mean, I really had to unlearn and then kind of build myself back up, and the podcast is part of that. Just buying fabric and making the clothes yourself doesn't extract you from the
Right.
impact of clothing. So you can't go to a fabric shop, make your clothes willy-nilly, run around going, I'm sustainable, la la la, check me out. And and there not be an impact. And so a lot of I had to do a lot of unlearning about that, because I was like, oh, I'm so free of fast fashion. And then I was thinking, oh, but hang on, wait, I'm still creating garments. They're not always getting worn. They still get disposed of. I'm still buying fabric. And in fact, when you buy fabric to make one garment, there's probably going to be more waste per garment than if it was something part of a production line, when those pieces could be
Right.
tessellated much tighter. So generally in mass manufacture, I believe it's about 15% is the average fabric waste
Okay.
from the cutting layouts. This is something I want to do myself, and I keep forgetting to do it. But what I should do is weigh the amount of fabric
Yeah.
at the start of a project, make my project, and then weigh what's left. But I'm pretty convinced it will be more than 15%.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, so there's that. There's that.
So what's your answer for that? How are you trying to change? What are you wanting to do now?
Good question. So I have my own formula of what I can. So basically, I think what we need to do is aim to make clothing that sees a lot of use over a long period of time. Like,
Yeah.
you can't make a garment that's literally going to last you decades and receive a lot of use. That's not the goal. The goal is to be realistic, but to make things that we have in our possession for a long time and see a lot of use. And I believe that the way that we can do that best is by really considering three things. Considering what by creating like a really good fit for our body. Like, everyone's body is unique. Just like it's very hard to find a garment from ready to wear that would fit you and all your friends. Same with sewing patterns, learning how to fit garments that fit your body well.
Yeah.
Also making garments that fit your lifestyle as well. So considering, like, what does your lifestyle look like? What are your requirements? How do you spend your time? What climate do you live in?
Yeah.
Like, there's no point if you live in like the northern Australia, maybe making a quilted jacket isn't for you, however much you think they're great and
Well,
however
we'll
easy
get
it is.
into the quilted jacket conversation in a minute.
I'm sure we will. Or vice
Yeah.
versa, like, you live in Canada, I'm guessing there's a limit to how many loose flowy summer dresses that you require. I don't know, I'm sure you do have hot summers also,
We
but
have very
there's
hot summers. Yes.
but you don't need 50 of them, probably.
Yeah.
Like, being realistic about what your requirements are. If you have small children, if you go out, if you have quite a kind of a business lifestyle, like, whatever those factors are, thinking about that. And then lastly, thinking about what your personal taste is. Like, trends come and go, and some trends will be for you, some trends won't be for you. How you choose to kind of embrace those or not is another aspect of this. But really thinking about what you love, thinking about what colors bring you joy, what's going to fit into the rest of your wardrobe. There's so many ways that you can learn about yourself for that. I find that having like Pinterest boards and things like
Mhm.
that kind of sit, or things that I save on Instagram, like, what do I naturally gravitate to, what is really speaking to me,
Yeah.
and then making sure that whatever you make has aspects that really truly speak to you. It's not just, oh, there's the new pattern and there's that blouse that everyone's making, I'm going to make that. Like, maybe you do like that blouse, but what colors is it going to work better in for you? What view are you going to make? Like, do you want the collar up there, or do you want the sleeves down here? Like, all those things that are really going to speak to you. So it's making things that fit your body well, fit your lifestyle well, and fit your personal taste well. And I think if you can tick those boxes as well as you can, you're more likely to have garments that are going to see a lot of use over a long period of time.
Yeah, nice. And so what's your criteria around material selection?
So, controversially, I don't think that necessarily buying the linen or the organic cotton is necessarily going to be the most sustainable option when it comes to garment sewing. For me, I feel that the item that you really want to make, that you're going to make fit to your body and your lifestyle and your personal taste, you need to choose the fabric that's going to work best for that project. Sure. Because if you are not into linen, if you're not in, or whatever, or if it doesn't work for that particular garment, then you're not going to use it. It's going to sit in your wardrobe, and you're going to then go and make something else, and you're going to consume some more fabric.
Sure.
So there are things that I personally would very much always try and stick to. Like, I don't buy polyester, but I mean, I do buy some synthetic fabric, because I think, when I'm making like a swimming costume, I need some
Right.
synthetic fabric.
Yeah.
Or if I'm making a pair of jeans that, let's say, jeans is always the example that I come back to. Like, you could make a pair of jeans in 100% organic cotton, awesome. However, if you're not going to wear those because they don't feel very comfortable to
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
that's not as sustainable, I would argue, as if you want like a skinny style that needs some stretch that you are
Yeah.
going to wear till the cows come home. Maybe it's more sustainable to buy the fabric that has a little bit of elastane that will
Yeah.
unfortunately release some microplastics, but you're
Yeah.
going to wear that. You're not going to just leave it there and then go and buy something else.
Yeah, that's
So
one of those areas that I struggle with the whole jean thing is yeah, like I remember I'm a bit older than you are, but before the stretch was put into jeans, I used to wear jeans back in my teens, and they were really tight jeans. You used to have to lie down on the couch or on the bed and get the coat hanger on your zipper to try and pull them up because they were so tight. There was no
I can't
stretch.
imagine.
Oh my
I
God.
can't imagine how uncomfortable that would
It
be. I
was
would never
so
wear
tight.
them.
It was ridiculous, but I was 16, and that's what I did back then. But now
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older and I like the tummy tuck. I like the little extra bit of stretch that happens and helps hold everything together. It makes me feel better.
So basically, so what I'm saying is that I think like the definition of what is a more sustainable fabric
Yeah.
can be looked at in a number of from a number of
For
angles. Yeah.
sure, for sure. Yeah. And that's, I think that's true for so many different areas. There's no one right answer for
Mm,
sustainability. There is no formula because it's going to
absolutely.
be very individual. And I think that we just all have to work from our own individual spaces and make these little steps towards sustainability. And that's all we can do.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and so many things that you speak about on your podcast really resonate as well. And I know something that, as you're a big proponent of, is use what you've got. Like, if you can look
Yeah.
in your stash or resource collection or whatever you want to call it, have you got something that's suitable for the pattern that you want to make or the
Yeah.
garment that you've got in mind? Equally, something that I'm a kind of proponent of that I haven't actually spoken about that much on my podcast, but is it's quite common that you see a gorgeous sewing pattern and you want to make it, and whether or not you've got something suitable, or you have to go to the fabric shop. What about instead, sometimes we look at projects from the other way around, like, what have I got? I've got this piece of fabric, what can that be?
Yeah.
And doing it from that angle, and that can be super creative,
Yeah.
as can figuring out what to do with your scraps and leftovers as well. I find that is can be hugely satisfying
Yeah.
to find a project that you can incorporate those, either by combining them in an interesting way, or like piecing them together, or there's so many interesting ways that you can use scraps and leftovers, and that can be a real challenge in itself. And it has almost like a different that's almost like there's like a different satisfaction to be found in
Yeah.
working in that way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that I recommend with quilting is to start with your stash
Mm,
and instead of having a project in mind, pull your stash out and see what comes out of that. Pull your scrap box out that you've been throwing away and come and see what does it give to you? What can you create
absolutely,
out of that instead of trying to find a
absolutely.
project to fit those things in the first place? See what
Yeah,
the project
and
what yeah.
something that I think, when you're making garments for yourself, and if you have really tapped into like what colors you're interested in and what fibers feel good for you, you'll tend to find, as you bring your scraps and leftovers together, you're getting like a little color palette, and you're finding some fabrics that work together really well anyway, because they are kind of literally representative of your wardrobe.
Right,
And then,
right,
so
right.
putting those together and making items, they're going to blend really well with your wardrobe because they're already your colors. And that can
Right.
be really, really fun.
Yeah, super. Okay, so I want to come back to that question around the quilts made into clothing, which is
Okay.
a trend right now. You asked me this because you've interviewed me for your podcast, and you asked me
Yes.
this question. So I'm asking you, how do you feel about what are your thoughts about the trend of quilts being made into fashion items now?
I feel very similar to you. I feel conflicted because I do see quilts as art pieces in and of themselves. However, a lot of the quilts, and I think it all comes down to how you're sourcing your quilt, where you're sourcing it from. If you are buying it on Etsy and it's perfect and you're cutting that up into a coat, I struggle with that.
Yeah.
If you have found it in a jumble sale or like a flea market and it is moth eaten, and
Yeah.
well, it's not moth eaten because moth larvae don't think cotton, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If it is, it's perished in some way. It's dirty. It's no longer going to function as a quilt. People are not going to have it on their wall or their bed or their sofa, and its next stop is most likely going to be either the textile recycling bank or landfill. I
Yeah.
think why not use that to make a garment, you know? I also feel that when it comes to if you are a passionate garment sewer, you don't need to find a quilt. You could kind of do the piecing yourself. Like that's a fun challenge in and of itself. If you've been a garment sewer for a while, you've probably got resources, as we were literally just saying, you've probably got scraps that you can combine and get that look
Yeah.
yourself and have the fun of piecing as well and learning a new skill if that's something that's new to you. So I think there's ways to embrace that trend if that's a trend that you want to participate in more sustainably, like either
Yeah.
by piecing those things yourself or by literally sourcing something that is very much on its last legs. I do struggle with people that are cutting into perfect, beautiful, historic looking, gorgeous quilts. That is something that I struggle with.
Yeah.
But
I
there is
feel like,
ways to adopt it more sustainably, I think.
yeah, I think that those quilts that are in decent shape have the opportunity to be something else, whether they're used as a
Yeah,
bed quilt or not. They could be, couch covers or whatever. I think that
absolutely.
there's other resources for those quilts than just cutting them up into a piece of fast fashion that's going to then be discarded within a year when
Yeah.
it's not fast fashion, but into a
Yeah.
fashion trend that's not going to be there within a year. Um,
Absolutely. And even if it is something that ends up getting used for years, it's going to wear out. Like garments do not last forever. You know,
yeah,
that's why there's limited examples of historic clothing because it doesn't
right.
last forever.
So I guess what one of the main questions I want to ask now is, how do people find you?
Well, if you would like to listen to my podcast, you can find the podcast on all major streaming services or on checkyourthread.com. There's players for each episode on that website. You can find Check Your Thread on Instagram at Check Your Thread, and you can find my personal sewing account on Instagram at SoZoblog, SOZOBLOG. And if you want to look at my long running blog, it is Sozo What Do You Know?
Awesome. Well, and I'll put that all into the show notes as well, so people can link to it if they want to out of the episode. I want to thank you so much for this conversation. It's gone in a lot of different routes, and I've learned so much because I don't know a lot about the sewing industry, and I haven't thought about a lot of the things you talked about with us today. So I really appreciate the conversation.
Oh, you are so welcome. And I would love to have more of these conversations in the future with you.
Yeah, I look forward to that. I think that's going to be, I'd like to check in and see where you're at. And we can see, yeah, if any of our viewpoints have changed on some of this stuff. And maybe we've got some new ideas. Who knows? I'm sure we will.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
That was such a great episode, such a great conversation. I really like talking to Zoe about the community that she ends up connecting with around her Me Made May, which, by the way, is about to start in another month. So if it's something that's actually interesting for you, you can head on over to her Instagram and you'll start seeing some information about that. She's got some blog information as well, and links are in the show notes, so you can check that out if you want to participate in the Me Made May that's coming up. She'll be giving out some inspirational prompts, and her latest episode, I think her April episode, is going to be about the Me Made May coming up. So you might want to check that out too on her Check Your Thread podcast. What I really liked about that was the synergies and the similarities between what we're both trying to do, but kind of asking different people to do it. The zero waste, the working within your own comfort zone as well, I think is really, really important. No, I don't think there's any one right way, and I don't think Zoe does either. There's any one right way to do sustainability, and we kind of have to work with what works for us in the space that we're in right now. So whatever you're doing out there, I think it's awesome. And I hope that you are enjoying the podcasts and you'll be able to get a little more inspiration and find ways that can work for you to reach sustainability. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. If you're interested in a community that engages with sustainability in quilting and textiles, you can join the Learning Hub at bridgeto'flaherty.com. There you will find memberships, online courses, supplies, and resources for sustainability and my textile art. You can also book me to speak with or teach your group. You can find me on social media at The Sustainable Quilter. Don't forget to comment, like, and share, and to follow me on your favorite podcast app so you won't miss an episode. Thanks for joining me, and I'm so excited to share this journey with you. Until next time, happy stitching.